Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by the National Science Teachers Association. You can find out more at nsta.org. While you're there, take a look at NSTA's National Conference this spring from April 11th to the 14th in St. Louis. We hope to see you there. You're listening to the Lab Out Loud podcast, Science for the Classroom and beyond. And today we're talking to a guest who wants us to talk more to scientists.
People don't realize how normal scientists are. I think they are sort of intimidated by how scientists are portrayed, and they think that you have to be a genius to be a scientist. And I think as long as you're not intimidated by science, you can have students really want to approach it a lot more. And I think meeting a scientist really helps with that.
That's up next on Lab Out Loud, but first, I'm your co-host Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartel.
And if you've been listening to Lab Out Loud, you get a chance to basically hear our guests and hear about podcasting. We don't really talk about podcasting too much, but we will be doing that at the NSTA conference in St. Louis.
So that's coming up in just a few weeks in April, and we are going to have a session on Saturday morning where we are going to talk about podcasting and how you might want to incorporate it into your classroom, either by listening to it or maybe even making podcasts.
That's right. Our session is at 11 a.m. on Saturday, April 13th, and it's in room 151 in America's Center. I guess we'll find that when we get to St. Louis. But if you're going to that conference and you get a chance to swing on over to our session, please say hi.
Yeah, we'd love to see you there. Maybe we'll be wearing our Lab Out Loud t-shirts other times during the conference. It's kind of hard to identify us because you don't necessarily know what we look like, but maybe if you hear our voice, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's the Lab Out Loud guys.
Hey, that just happened to you recently, didn't it?
Yeah. Last week we were at the Wisconsin conference and someone sat down next to me and I was talking to her and she basically was like, I know your voice. You're from Lab Out Loud. So I feel like I'm almost a celebrity. At least voice celebrity.
Voice celebrity. Well, if you're out there and you like our show and you want to say something about it, one of the things you can do to support the show is simply go over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a comment. That really helps others find our show. We're also in Spotify, and anywhere you basically can get podcasts, you can find Lab Out Loud. So that's a way to support the show. You can also support the show at our Patreon page. You can do as little as $1 a month and just kind of throw some support our way. We are going to try to pool up some funds basically to do special projects. Brian and I have been kicking around some ideas, and so that's what that's all about. And then finally, if you want to, wear Lab Out Loud, there's always the t-shirt that's at our website. So you can actually wear a Lab Out Loud t-shirt or give it away for Education Week to your favorite science teacher. That's an option there, and you can find it all at our website.
But this week, we are going to talk to someone who has made it her mission to bring scientists into your classroom, at least virtually, that is.
That's right. Her name is Sarah McAnulty, and she is first going to talk to us about squid.
Sure. My name's Sarah McAnulty, and I'm a squid biologist at the University of Connecticut, and I'm also the founder of the science communication platform Skype a Scientist.
Squid biologist?
Yeah.
What got you into that?
Yeah, so I work with this little squid that's about the size of a lime. It's nocturnal. It's called the Hawaiian bobtail squid. And they're really cool because they have this special symbiosis or partnership with this bioluminescent bacteria. And so the bioluminescent bacteria lives in this little organ on the underside of the squid. And then the squid can use the light from the bacteria to camouflage against moonlight coming down from above. So if there's an animal swimming below the squid that's looking for a meal, instead of seeing like a little squid-shaped silhouette, they just see nothing because the squid is able to match that moonlight using basically its ink sac as a shutter around the bacteria. So we use this squid to understand how animals and bacteria communicate with each other.
I remember doing something with this organism, actually, now that you mention it, because we used to use the P-Glow system from Biorad, and we would talk about what is the purpose of bioluminescence? And there's nothing like creating bioluminescence in the lab that gets more kids. It's amazing, and again, you turn the lights off and it works, and it's like, wow. But I remember that piece of that. Yeah.
I read a book about squids were a whole chapter, squid and octopus. And now I don't eat them because it was terrifying that they some of them are far more smarter than we think they are. So
Yeah.
But how did you get on squids?
So I was interested in squid from the time that I was really small. So I watched this Nat Geo Kids episode, and they introduced the cuttlefish. They played Twilight Zone music. The cuttlefish swam in, and it was doing this passing cloud maneuver. So basically, they'll take this like line of black and move it across their body, kind of like a hypnotist pinwheel.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, and I was just hooked. I was maybe 8. And I had previously been interested in dinosaurs. And then from then on, I was just like, forget about it. Like squid and cuttlefish are where it's at. So
I remember
fantastic.
the Planet Earth's had recent ones, or Planet Earth 2, the DVD series. They had this whole section on cuttlefish and how they can, mimic other cuttlefish. And they look like road signs after a while. They're blinking so much. It's
so amazing. Yeah.
So now this is something that you were able to make into a career. What do you do on a daily basis?
I come into the lab and then I check on the squid and make sure everybody's happy and healthy. And what
Who's a good squid?
Exactly. Yeah. I'll check, their water, make sure it's clean, make sure it has the right salt content, that kind of thing, feed everybody. And then I will take the squid and take a tiny little blood sample from them. It doesn't hurt them. It just is like a quick little drop. And then from there, I do experiments on their immune cells, because the immune system is basically how animals can listen or talk to the other bacteria that may live in their bodies. So bacteria have these sort of complex little molecules that they're constantly releasing that allow our immune system to know that they're there. And so I look at the immune cells to figure out how they tell bacteria that they want around from those that they think that they should destroy. And so that's really important for keeping squid healthy, but it's also important for keeping humans healthy, because bacteria in our guts are really essential for our health, from digestion and from keeping ourselves from getting sick and all kinds of things. So the squid is just really nice because it's a more simplified system for understanding these things.
This is actually an example of what we really called you to talk about, but here we're connecting with you. You're in Connecticut, and we're learning about your role as a scientist, and we're doing this through the internet, through Skype, and connecting with scientists, and that's what you have some other experience with.
Yeah, exactly. So this is like what it's all about in my career, is talking to people about science in like a just friendly kind of conversational way. So I started this program back in 2017 called Skype a Scientist. And it's just this platform that allows either teachers or groups of adults, groups of students in clubs, or even like library groups to communicate with a scientist of their choosing. So let's say you want to bring a scientist in your classroom. We have about 3,000 scientists from all different walks of life, from chemistry, geology, physics, biologies of all different kinds, that you can request. And then you set up a meeting. And you'll have a conversation in your classroom. So a lot of times the scientists will give you a little bit of background on what they do and why they think it's cool and why they love it. And then it's all open to question and answer, because we really think that making science come alive and making people realize that scientists are just like them and that science is for everyone, is having them talk back and forth with scientists and not just sitting in a lecture by a scientist.
Sure.
Because the scientists should hear what the kids have to say too. It helps everybody.
How did this all come to be?
So it was 2017, and the political climate had recently shifted, and a lot of people were noticing that there's this increase in mistrust of scientists and science on the whole. There was a lot of this just people doing things that we don't think they should be doing, like juice cleanses or not vaccinating their kids, or not really knowing where to go for information about their health or about their children's health. And so I sort of asked myself, why is this happening? We have science, we have medicine. Why aren't people going to the experts for this? And I think it all kind of came down to this division in the country and people not trusting science and scientists. And so I thought, how can we fix this? Maybe we can just get people talking to scientists, getting to meet us, because they're this like increasing group online that would say that scientists are so different from what we really are. They may think that we're being funded by Monsanto or like some other group of like business, basically, that is giving us money to give them a certain answer. And so we just wanted them to realize it's not what we're doing. We're just like out there trying to find the truth. And so if they could meet us, maybe they'd realize that we're on their team.
One of the things that strikes me is really interesting about this part of it is we've been talking about science communication probably since Lab Out Loud started. We've talked about science literacy and the need to communicate for scientists to the rest of the world. We saw that with like the explosion of cafe scientifiques out there. We've also seen it in podcasts as well. But now we're at a time where we actually have the technology to do this very easily. Just even the concept of FaceTime has become its own. The kids know what this means, and the teachers can do this a lot easier in their classroom than they ever could. And so the time is ripe for this. So do you find that with the scientists as well, that this would have been easier? This is easier to do now than it would have been even 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So scientists are just like so busy as people. We're constantly moving around and participating in our work. And so it's really wonderful because now you can just start your experiment in the morning and then communicate with someone for a half hour or an hour and not even leave the lab by using Skype. And it's just, or any other video chat platform. So it could not be easier to connect. I mean, between that and also Twitter is a great place for people to connect with scientists. Mm-hmm. I just felt like scientists knew that they had to connect better than they had been. And it was just so easy that all we had to do was match them up, the classrooms and the scientists, and just sort of say, go forth and get talking.
So if you are a scientist listening out there, is there a way for you to participate? How do you get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to skypeascientist.com and you can sign up as a scientist from our homepage. There's a bunch of different like FAQs that you can look into. And if you have any questions, you can contact us via Twitter at Skype Scientist, and you can contact us at skypeascientist@gmail.com too.
What is the most represented discipline in the sciences that you have available?
Absolutely biologists.
Is it they're just talkative or what?
That's a good question. I think
I'm working with animals. I need to get out.
Oh, yeah.
They got good props.
That's a stereotype. I'm sorry.
I think it's just that I'm a biologist, so biologists tend to know biologists. So I am pretty active on Twitter. And so I'm always talking about squid and ecology. And I think that then people who are interested in ecology and marine biology tend to follow me. And then that's sort of how things spread. We do have every type of scientist. We have physicists, chemists, astrophysicists, all sorts of stuff, geologists. But we have more ecologists and biologists than anybody else.
Who do you need more of?
We need more. Some of the classrooms will request veterinarians or medical doctors.
Oh, yeah.
And so that would be something that we'd really like to have more of. And also chemists we're a little low on.
Okay.
And a lot of times the teachers will ask for astronauts, and I don't think they realize how few astronauts like there are in the world.
Yeah.
So that's tough. But yeah, we could use more astrophysicists too.
How about registered nurses?
That's a good question. We don't have nurses on there.
But I think that, they make my wife's a nurse. That's why I think they're often that first line of communication with patient care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that might be able to fill that need.
Yeah, for sure. I think if they wanted to sign up as medical doctors, that would be close enough for the classroom's perspective.
For sure.
What's your feedback been from these experiences?
Overall, really good. So we put out a survey at the end of every semester, and every semester we've gotten a little better. So we started, in 2017. So this is the 5th semester that we're doing this. And our matching has improved a lot. We now not only match based on where you are. So, for example, we don't want to give a West Coast scientist an 8 a.m. classroom on the East Coast, so that they would have to wake up at like 5 a.m. to talk to them. So we take that into consideration. We also take into consideration the type of scientist that the classroom wants to talk to. And then also like underrepresented groups will match together. So if you have a classroom that's primarily Latin American, we'll match that up with a scientist Latin American so that the kids can see themselves in the scientific process.
Okay.
How many connections have been made? Do you have stats?
Yeah, we have 14,000 classrooms have been matched.
Okay. And out of those, is there, like, what grade level? Like, we talked about, like, which scientists do you have the most of? Is there a certain grade level that is it all grade levels, first of all? And is there a certain area you break into more? Or?
Yeah, so we have served everybody from kindergarten to community college. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where most of our classrooms come from. I get the sense it may be elementary school, but I don't have the stats. And I haven't asked our bioinformatician who does all of the like computer science work. This whole program is myself and actually my best friend from high school who studied bioinformatics for his PhD.
Oh, wow.
And so he wrote the algorithm that matches the classrooms and scientists. And he would be able to access all that data.
Oh, wow. It's like an algorithm that's doing this too. So
yeah, if we matched them by hand, we wouldn't have time to like do anything else. Exactly. So we've gotten better at some other things too. So like, for example, some teachers have said like, some teachers don't care. Any biologist will do, whether it's a molecular and cell biologist, geneticist, ecologist, whatever, they're fine. But some want specifically to talk to like a scientist who studies bees because in class they're going to be talking about colony collapse or whatever. And so we were like, how can we possibly do this in a way that doesn't completely like give away all of the scientist information to become available for everybody? So David Jenkins, the bioinformatician, he has this tool where you can search for keywords that the scientists participate in, and then you can request specific scientists based on their like little 5-word description of what they do. So they just have their name, the time zone they're in, because that's super important, and the thing that they study.
All right. You also, it looks like you have like a Skype a Scientist live session.
Oh, yeah, those are so fun. So we have about anywhere between 1 and 3 times a week, we'll have a session that we conduct over YouTube Live. So this was in response to some feedback that we got that homeschoolers and schools that have poor internet connections weren't doing great with the sessions because either their internet connections just weren't strong enough to like upload video and sound while downloading video and sound, like having that streaming bandwidth. So they wanted something where they could submit questions ahead of time, get them asked to a scientist who records the answers, and then watch it afterward. And
cool.
We
works good
developed
for
this
multiple
type of
class
Live.
periods too, things like that. Where
Where you want to give everybody the same experience. Yeah.
And Dale and I work with teachers. We know that some of them, their planning needs some help. So this is like, hey, what's happening on the 14th at 1:30? I could fill that slot.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's really great. It's really easy because I think also some teachers get so overwhelmed with everything that they have to do in their day that they don't want to spend the extra 10 emails or whatever to set up time to meet with the scientist. So they can just say, okay, well, we know that this is happening on this day. And come hell or high water, it's going to be there. So we'll just tune in.
Well, that's what my other question was as far as planning from the teacher's perspective. Do you have like, these are the top pieces of advice for a teacher who's listening and wants to do that, like sort of do's and don'ts, perhaps?
I guess don't assume that you can get a scientist to come in on a specific day because we match you based on when you say your class is meeting. Like, for example, you'll tell us that your class meets at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'll give you a scientist that's free generally on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That does not mean that they're free every Tuesday and Thursday. They may be at a conference. They may be, have a meeting or something.
Sure.
So scientists are super busy. So try to be flexible in when you can fit that scientist in because it's going to be a battle of the schedule books between 2 very busy people. So, you just try to be as flexible as possible. And the more flexible you are, the easier it is to get the scientist the scientist schedule in your schedule to work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like a rock star scientist that's like, oh, this one's always requested, or who's done the most, or do you have like badges and awards?
Who's done the most? We don't have badges and awards right now. I'm doing my PhD, and I will defend. So I'll like graduate in August. So
congratulations.
Thanks. I'm just trying to keep the ship afloat as functionally as possible while finishing this PhD. But I'll be running the program full time starting in the fall. And so that's when we're going to start like kind of getting into more stuff like that, like giving scientists call out recognition for being awesome and that kind of thing. And we also want to include scientist training into the program that's optional. So some scientists have already done a lot of communication training, are already really comfortable talking to anyone. And then some have said to us, one of the feedback things that we got was, it would be really nice if you could kind of train me on how to talk to the public, because some scientists, maybe they're graduate students and they've really only ever spoken with other scientists about science. Mm-hmm. This is one of the times they're like trying it for one of the first times. And so having a little bit of training in there would be something that we absolutely want to do. And we're going to start building this fall.
You know who's good at that? Teachers.
That's so true.
Yeah. So, maybe got to reverse this.
Yeah, very true. Get the scientists to talk to the teachers about science and the teachers to talk to the scientists about
conveying
talking.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, I'm looking through the list of who you have available. Do you have anyone that has done anything on like lab safety?
Probably. I mean, all scientists know how to be safe about what they do. So a chemist is going to know how to treat kind of explosive, nasty stuff that you don't want to breathe in or touch.
Yeah.
But I really don't know how to do that. But I know how to keep a squid healthy, and I know how to not like give myself cancer with the fixatives that we use and that kind of thing.
What are you thinking about, Brian? You want to, beginning of the year, like you get someone in, they're like, all right, here's what happened.
No. So, well, maybe.
Scared straight science class.
No, what I'm thinking about is that like this is a universal kind of idea that, we all should, or if we're not, we all go over science safety for the classroom that we're teaching in. But sometimes like students are disconnected as, well, why do I need goggles, or why does it matter? And I'm not necessarily thinking of necessarily like the accidents, like you'll lose an eye kind of a thing, but moreover, like this could derail my research, or it could harm my squid. If I'm not careful with science, what does it mean in the real world here?
This could be a good one of those asynchronous ones, because you're right, everybody's got to hit this topic at the start of the year.
Yeah, and you could have like a chemistry lab safety one that would be kind of a generic thing there, and you could have like a biological one there, or a microbiological lab safety kind of clip there. And not much, but this could be something that could be, again, like you said, like an asynchronous thing that people could queue up. And again, if I'm teaching chemistry 5 classes throughout the day, it would be kind of, again, getting that perspective beyond the classroom of why is safety important, and why, what can it do if I'm not careful?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think we'd like to also kind of have a little bit more content on our YouTube channel that's not just the question and answer sessions.
Oh.
So we kind of played with that a bit. Last week, actually, we had a Venom week. So we had 6 Venom researchers do a little video about their research that we then put out online throughout the week. And then on the Friday, we had the Skype with Scientists live session with those 6 all together. And so having that kind of thing, like little things for classrooms to use, would be great. And I think starting in the fall, when we have more kind of human resource to put toward this stuff, that would be really wonderful. And we also want to like take the Skype with Scientists live sessions that are currently, they run about an hour, and like condense those into like the 5 coolest minutes of that session, and then just allow those. Because in a classroom, you may spend an hour listening to a science talk, but podcasts do that. But I don't know, it might just be more digestible to have that up.
It'd also be a cool topic is measurement. And I'm thinking, again, not like this is why we need measurement, but
Brian's just putting in his wish list here.
But like I'm thinking of like ranges of measurement that are hard to demonstrate in the classroom too, from the very small, of course, to measuring large gigantic distances. We can throw different equations and conversions out there, but what does that actually mean when we're talking about microliters and things like that, and getting a perspective of what that is? That would be kind of a cool thing.
When these conversations happen, it is all video back and forth. So do the scientists, are they able to like show their lab or show what they're working on? In many cases.
It depends on the scientist. So some scientists do these sessions from home, maybe because they have like a group office in the lab.
Yeah.
But when I've had sessions, I also have a group office in the lab, but I think my lab mates have sort of accepted that I'm going to be talking a lot in the lab. So I'll pick my computer up and do a lap around the lab. I'll show our microscopes and our centrifuges and our vortexers and all sort of like the fun stuff that you get in a lab. Mm-hmm. And I'll usually bring a squid up in like a little tiny aquarium that they'll be happy in for only about an hour and show the kids that.
Hard to get the headset on the squid, though.
Yeah, it's really tough. Yeah, they're really, really squishy, slimy. They don't want to.
But you find your most photogenic one and go from there.
Yeah,
exactly.
The camera likes. Do you? That was another question I had. How do you name your squid? Do you have?
We actually name them by cohort. So, like when we get a group in from Hawaii, we'll give them a letter as a group. So right now, I think we're on our L letter, our L cohort, and then they just get a number from there. So they're L1, L2, L3, and which is not that exciting, but it's what we name them. And then if they do something really bizarre, they'll get another name. So like, for example, there was one squid who like would kill shrimp and then like stick them on his head. And so he was, that's memorable, and maybe you'll get a nickname from that. But
Shrimp Head 5.
Yeah, Shrimp Head 5. Yeah.
Oh wow! Is there a sort of? I mean, I asked a question about like what teachers should do or don't. What about like the reluctant teacher who is listening and going, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I don't have the time, or I'm not sure, I'm not tech savvy, I'm not sure about the equipment. Any guides there to kind of get them to make that first step? Maybe they don't have a tech coach like Brian and I.
Yeah, so there are plenty of online tutorials for this stuff that's really straightforward. A lot of times it's just a matter of, it's really like calling on your computer. So
sure.
With Skype.
Are we limited to Skype, or can they do other options?
You can use absolutely whatever software works for you. We're not funded by anyone. So you can use, we just picked Skype because it started with an S, and so does science.
Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it.
So it's got a nice ring to it, exactly. So
it's like the Kleenex of our tissues.
It is.
Exactly. The Kleenex of video chat, yes. So you can use Google Hangout, you can use Zoom, you can use, there's one called like Blue Jeans or something. So you can use whatever you have in your district. There honestly are very little rules in our program other than respond to your emails. If you respond to your emails, you're good. And don't be a jerk to anyone, and you haven't broken any rules. But as long as you can get a half-hour block at some point in your class to talk with a scientist, I think it's really it really brings science to life for kids. And I think it's a really important opportunity, because I think oftentimes, I know I sort of said this before, but like people don't realize how normal scientists are. I think they are sort of intimidated by how scientists are portrayed, and they think that you have to be a genius to be a scientist. I am not a genius. Like, I am a pretty average intelligence person, but I can do science because science is a method that allows us to learn like new stuff. And so I think as long as you're not intimidated by science, you can have students really want to approach it a lot more. And I think meeting a scientist really helps with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. It's been fascinating, and I can't wait to share this with the teachers that I work with. And hopefully you'll see some growth in veterinarians and lab safety videos.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Lab Out Loud. If you're looking for information or show notes about this episode, head on over to our website, laboutloud.com. If you've been listening to Lab Out Loud, play the episodes in class or for your students, or simply value teacher-driven support for science education, please consider supporting our show by becoming a Lab Out Loud Patreon. Visit our website for more information.
Of course, we always love to hear from you, our listeners. Maybe you have an idea for a guest. Are there topics in science and science education that need to be addressed? Submit your comments, concerns, and suggestions through our contact page on laboutloud.com or tweet to us at laboutloud. Also, you can find Lab Out Loud on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else you can find podcasts. And while you're there, consider leaving a comment, rating us, or liking us at these services. Your feedback helps others find our show.